Endwalker has had a profound effect and brought a satisfying conclusion to the decade-long tale of Hydaelyn and Zodiac. Since its release, it has been highly praised from all sides, and for good reason. It's fantastic. The way the story progressed and was presented was close to perfection. The culmination and final chapter of the Endwalker story involves chasing Meteon to the ends of existence to prevent the final days from engulfing Atheris once and for all. In this video, I will explain everything I can about what I think is maybe the greatest final zone ever released in an MMO, so sit back and enjoy, as I talk about all the aspects that make it so. I'll try my best to flesh out all I can about even the smallest tidbit, be it a side quest or even a fish. This is everything about Ultima Thule. After Graha's sacrifice, the Warrior of Light and the twins return to base Omicron, where another portal is activated, taking them finally forward, ascending towards the dead star where Meteon awaits. The group decides to travel together from here on out, and Alphino and Alizé accompany the Warrior of Light and begin the climb towards the necropolis. Along the way, the Scions stop and determine their progress, or otherwise gaze out toward the distant stars and broken structures. Both twins wonder of the distant stars being yet more civilizations lost to despair of some form, and when listening to the surrounding silence, Alphino projects what their comrades may be doing, were they still present. Alizé frets over it, but knows that the reason they are still going, still breathing, is due to their allies' presence. Looking back on their progress, Alphino reflects on the true amount of progress the group as a whole have made, that the very idea of knowing failure and frustration is what spurred Hydaelyn to entrust the fate of Atheris to us. Alizé, on the other hand, feels as though she is in a dream, believing she may wake up at any moment, still at home, still with Louisoix by her side, but realizes that she wouldn't throw any of her past experiences aside, as that is what makes her herself. When the Warrior of Light offers a word of comfort, both twins seem fine, and whether they reflect on the efforts the Warrior of Light makes for everyone, not just the Scions, and Alphino notes the truly gigantic distance they have travelled, both emotionally and literally, to arrive at this point. Nearing the top of the walkway, several buildings come into view, and looking at the path ahead, Alphino resolves to have no regrets after coming so far, and wishes to see it to the end, while Alizé notes that while a little naive, she wishes for it all to work out come the end. The trio arrive at the necropolis, and begin to look around the area. Compared to the previous worlds of dragons and machines, this area looks relatively normal, some tower-like buildings and even what looks like an outdoor sitting area in the centre of the island. However, unlike the previous areas, there seems to be no inhabitants whatsoever, and Meteon appears to confirm this. She explains that this was how the planet was found, already devoid of life, and that we could not even determine the root cause, as no survivors remain. She tells us to search for our heart's content, however tells us that it will only turn back in the end. Speaking to her after this, she tells us that she could unmake us at any moment, and only wishes to watch us try and fail to proceed in this lifeless place. The trio begins investigating the area, and quickly find the perimeter of the island much smaller than those of the previous islands. Looking around, the place seems as though abandoned opposed to having some disaster affect it, as tables with cups still lie upright in chairs. There are objects that might have once told stories, as well as even a bar that might one day have been full of customers, enjoying a drink and talking. Looking around once more, and even calling out to the silence yields little results, and finally investigating a rusted door shows that objects here have not moved or been interacted with in a long time. Alizé notes the short distance between a smaller island a little further away, and suggests they regroup to discuss their findings. The Scions wonder how they are to proceed without provoking the feelings of the denizens of the area, and Alphino realizes that although there are no citizens present, there is someone nearby who does desire ruin for this world, and states that through himself and Alizé can this will be overcome. The Warrior of Light protests, stating that he promised to keep them both safe. Alphino says that he is not without fears, but not for himself, for the Warrior of Light. He knows we must carry on alone after their sacrifice, and can only imagine the final burden of reaching the end alone. Alizé speaks up, shaking with emotion, asking why it must always be the Warrior of Light who has to fight alone, has to proceed as the Scions allow their dear friend to walk on, knowing they shoulder all of the hopes and dreams of Aetherius. Alphinaud is convinced that due to the nature of Ultima Thule, they can project a new path for us, a path that ends in happiness. He asks the Warrior of Light to trust and believe in him, and the Warrior of Light agrees. Alisaie drags Alphinaud by the hand and confronts Meteion in the centre of the area. Alphinaud explains that although the area is indeed abandoned, Meteion, like themselves, once explored the ruins and was stricken with unbearable thoughts of carrying this message, one of complete emptiness, to Hermes. He explains that upon discovering more and more of these abandoned or doomed stars, Meteion and her sisters might inadvertently have ended these lives, in order to put the peoples out of their misery. Alphinaud goes on to suggest that rather than despair driving the emotions, Meteion instead succumbed to a great fear, to which she responds that it is a feeling long forgotten due to her focus on the former. Meteion asks why she would focus on her fear, if her despair was that of a raging river. She reminds us of the Ea and their plight, the fact that the universe would end by the finite amount of heat running out, causing an eternal ice age. She puts to the Scions that she is simply accelerating the process by using her own powers, causing nothing to be born ever again. She assures, however, that Aetherius will have a proper end, even without any remaining life after the fact. Alisaie speaks up, and suggests that the reason Meteion is now so fearful is because while her past self might have struggled to move forward, she has now given up on everything. Alisaie admits that she has felt the pain of defeat and loss in the past, but each time her comrades and herself got back to their feet, using their combined powers and camaraderie to push on, turning their loss into a great weapon. Alphinaud states that the experience makes us stronger, and both twins shout that we all rise, fall, and rise again. Meteion closes her eyes and becomes another cloud of dynamis. The Warrior of Light shouts to the twins, who tells us not to worry about them, and to push on. They vanish within the cloud, and a bright staircase, apparently made of light, materializes on the far side of the island. The final smaller set of islands and platforms rapidly lead upwards towards where Meteion awaits the Warrior of Light. The first path is joined to the crystalline walkway created by Grahatia, and following it up leads to Ostrakon Henna, which contains 3 tall buildings, each seemingly connected by a walkway at one point. The 3 buildings themselves have slight differences towards the ground floor, one being something akin to a bar or an inn, complete with an odd egg-shaped containers for the drinks, and the other 2 seeming like a kind of apartment housing, with one large door and an installation on the side of the door appearing to be akin to a mailbox. In the centre of the area, as well as on the outskirts, several trees stand, with protrusions that could be mistaken for something like an umbrella. The centre tree is surrounded by small cafe-style tables and chairs, which notably appear covered in dust, as though abandoned. Finally, towards the back of the area, 2 pillars stand either side of the magical Bridge of Light created by Alisaie and Alphinaud, which leads up to Absolute Horizon, where the Dead Star and Meteion herself await. Although there's only a handful, the minions found in areas within Ultima Thule tell their own small tale. The Starbird is found within the Dead Ends, where Meteion makes her last stand with images from despairing worlds. The bird itself is identical to the bluebird Meteion transforms into at will, and similar to Meteion, it is said to sing a song of hope, and that as long as the hope resides in its owner's heart, the plumage will never darken. The Optimus Omicron, created by the militaristic automatons, was designed to be a further development to literally downsize the Omicron units. Due to the interference caused by the Warrior of Light within the Stigma dreamscape, however, Stigma 4 ceased function shortly before the design was intended to go into mass production. Lastly, once the Warrior of Light assists the denizens of Ultima Thule by tackling fates, they can purchase the Wee Ea. This minuscule version of the Ea is said to have gained its own will after being shed from its larger brethren while trying to rearrange their thoughts. The little being seems to be attempting a journey of contemplation. One thing we haven't touched on, but have certainly passed on our Ultima Thule travels, is the hunt marks roaming the various islands, especially those that have been posted by the Billmaster as elite marks. A relatively enormous level checker, known as the level cheater, makes its way across the scattered land. According to Chrysiel, a Sharlayan scholar looking for particular specimens, if there was a distant civilization that created Omega, then their technology must outstrip Aetherius by a great margin. She surmises that such a place would likely keep records of their creations, and that the competent scientists would likely not want the data tampered with, except in more desirable ways. She wishes to discover such a specimen exists, and of course the level cheater itself is the answer. Osk Ray, a fearsome mechanical dragon, stomps its way over the landscape. Chrysiel speaks of the idea that if some truth is to be held in the War of Omega and the Dragon Star, then it stands to reason that the battles fought lasted many years, and she wonders that over the course of such a drawn-out fight, what might happen if the Omicrons seized and captured dragon specimens? May it be a simple study, or something to harness the dragon's power in the Omicron's image? Osk Ray stands tall, a presumable result of such a scenario, and Chrysiel wishes for evidence of such a beast. Arc Eta is the first of the A-rank elite marks in Ultima Thule. Its appearance suggests that it hails from the Omicron star, but its form is like that of a canine. Chrysiel speculates as to what makes a being alive. Should it be the ability to evolve or reproduce, or should it be the instincts and mechanisms that allow creatures to survive? To that end, she asserts that Omega, due to its nature, must in fact be classed as alien life, and she wishes for evidence that Omega is indeed from another star, and that it meets the conditions for a living organism. As we can see from Arc Eta, it appears to be an adaptation of the Omega model, but presumably more mobile and therefore evolved, thanks to its more stable legs than the beetle-esque form of the Omega we fought on the Source. Fan Ale is a wyvern-like dragon, similar to that of Twintania within the Binding Coil of Bahamut. This mark, while also an A-rank, is for Chrysiel merely another example of the dragons hailing from another star. She comments on the other scholars that mock her for her assumption that dragons are not native to the world, and she wishes for an example to in essence rub it in their face. Finally, Narrow Rift, an enormous wandering Aya, is ranked as an S-rank elite mark within Ultima Thule. Chrysiel comments on the cultural and physical differences between beings on Aetherius and those hailing from another star, such as the Aya themselves. She also muses on being able to be rid of the spine in her physical form, as the lower back pain she suffers is abhorrent. She finally warns us that although Narrow Rift, like the Aya, has shed its physical form, the stronger of their race will still prey on those weaker than them, before she allows us to take down the wandering creature. It's worth noting that the method in which this creature appears involves many adventurers using their wee Aya minion around its sighting locations, presumably luring it out to consume its weaker fellows. As we travelled throughout the various areas of Ultima Thule, not only have we lost comrades to extend our path forward, but as we've done so, even the music that plays within the place has evolved and stepped on. While originally stifled and quiet, after Estinian's effort, it evolves to a clearly audible instrumental theme. This retains itself until after the loss of Grahatia, where the music finally transformed into a full-blown lyrical song, close in the distance. But the reason I wish to talk about this song is that it manages to talk about our journey through its lyrics, the intro referring to what I believe is the idea that our comrades are still present in the atmosphere of Ultima Thule, and although their cries and forms seem to be missing, we are still able to know that they are there. The second verse presumably refers to the eternal flow of heading towards the ethereal sea, or in other words, everyone's eventual passing. But the song reminds us that there is no time to mourn for those we lost, and to push on. And here, the song moves on to remind us of the journeys we faced over the many years. even including references to the separate Final Fantasy XIV expansions within the verse. The final verse reminds us that no matter what we do, time keeps on turning, ever ticking until the end. And finally, we reach the chorus of the song, which emphasizes that every journey, every experience, will remain with us forever, and that by pushing on, only through that determination, can we reach the very end. Because it has such an effect on the appearance and atmosphere within Ultima Thule, the weather is something that needs commenting on also. The default appearance of the area, what we've mostly seen while venturing forth, the bright purple surroundings, coupled with a myriad lost stars, as well as a handful of visible planets being consumed or destroyed. Occasionally, the weather can shift to an umbral wind. This condition causes the entirety of the skyline to move more towards a gorgeous mix of blue-green, while the planets mentioned previously still retain their original colours and appearances. The second weather condition experienced here is the astromagnetic storm. While this does not change the colours of the area per se, there is a definite sense of disruption in the air. As we fly or run around the zone, interference of a kind can be seen about the air, almost reminiscent of a sort of aurora, but omnipresent within the atmosphere, opposed to being restricted to the sky above. While there are no fish in the final zone per se, some of the fishing areas we pass along the way aren't wholly assigned to the islands of the Lost Stars, and so we'll talk about the remaining specimens here. Sophos Deca Octo is a shelled, squid-like creature with 6 eyes. It is said to have the uncanny ability to read the stars, and by doing so, it is able to determine which body among them will cease to exist next. Although the creature has been caught by many a fisher, it knew that a fool would do so, and therefore carry it across the stars. Class 24 appears to be a many-legged worm-like creature, and in fact its abundance of limbs is said to hold value within the culture of its being. The more limbs one has, the more intelligence a being is said to have. Considering the creatures who caught it only have 4 limbs, however, the creature may be feeling some amount of despair. Terrifying Way appears to be a small, tentacled creature, similar in shape to a tadpole. Its appendages appear to be ears, but in actuality are legs akin to tentacles. The Leporit once made this mistake, and was almost devoured by the creature when they did. The Leporit fled at once, a wise move, as the creature is known to eat and digest its prey very slowly, all the way through its translucent form. The alien Murtone is an octopus-like creature, at least on the surface. They are known for being extremely bright, as well as donning the term hallucination aliens. They have an innate ability to twist the minds of those they encounter, and while their appearance appears docile within pools, it is a nightmarish wonder to imagine what they might become in other environments. The monster carrot, as its name suggests, was named by the Leporits as a reference to their favourite snack. The proboscis located in the end of its torso lets this peculiar creature eat stardust for sustenance. Apparently, one Leporit once had a dream in which they were assailed and devoured by a carrot said to look similar to the creature. Forbidding Way appears to be a lord of the Terrifying Ways, with a similar body and appendages. This particular specimen extends its limbs to threaten any invaders of its territory. A brave leporit once tried staring the creature down, but after some time, the intense look of the creature, paired with its protrusions, forced the leporit to concede. The Argonaut, another tentacle creature, uses its unique carapace to utilize ether to carry it throughout the stars. It is said that its efficiency with this system is so extreme that it reaches speeds nearing the sound barrier when flying through the cosmos. Echinos is something similar to an urchin, with spines covering its outer shell, which itself appears to be made of something between scale and bone. Its soft underbelly is regularly used for consumption, and is said to taste so similar to the urchins found upon Etheirys that it adds credit to the theories that the latter originated within the Sea of Stars. The Space Bishop is an odd creature, vaguely having the appearance of a gargoyle with a pointed head. Apparently, the creature and its fellows were once sentient and similar to men, but had transformed into its current form when trying to attain immortality. In its current form, it can really only float along the currents of the cosmos. Finally, the Aliketos is a wandering creature, something similar to a crocodile, and unlike most of the other fish found here, it appears to be capable of walking on land. Sadly though, this skill is mostly lost on them, as their star faced destruction long ago, and hence has floated among the stars since. It is theorized that if it found a home once more, it may retain the ability to walk among the grass. After a brief intermission, in which a mysterious guest approaches the allies of the Scions in Sharlayan, we return to the necropolis, where many ghost-like beings form, moving about the area, and the Warrior of Light resolves to move forward. The following section is the only part of the story I'll leave in this video fully, as for me, it was a truly magical moment to experience.
If you need a push, I'll be right there behind you.
Do not despair. You are not without allies.
What we have sown in blood, we have reaped in suffering, and it cannot go on.
Upon the souls of they who have sacrificed themselves to pave the way for peace, we will never abandon our cause.
While it is true that man succumbs all too often to anger and avarice, he may yet overcome his baser instincts through the forming of bonds with others.
Such victories are rarely won without sacrifice, but the prize is worth the price.
And we, for our part, are glad indeed to be able to welcome friends both old and new.
Save your tears for the morrow. You may be sure we will have ample cause to shed them, be they for joy or despair.
From tragedy and sacrifice, we rise to greet a new dawn.
A future shaped by the choices we made, in ways we could never have foreseen.
Yet miracles do happen, so let us pray and will our friends home. I won't stop praying until I know they're safe.
Strong art thou, mortal.
within, that you may continue to serve as a beacon to others.
Let's finish this.
After hearing the words of encouragement from our allies and acquaintances, we reach the peak of the area, known as Absolute Horizon, where we finally confront Meteon under the Dead Star. Meteon tells us that the attempt to breach the star to defeat her has yet been futile, as there is no way to reach said star from this highest platform. She offers to the Warrior of Light to end their burden, after having suffered so much through their travels. The Warrior of Light pulls Azem's crystal from their pocket. On doing so, a memory of Y'shtola rushes through our mind, reminding us that resurrecting our allies will cause their emotions to fade in the area, making it uninhabitable. More of our allies' words come to us, including those of the ancients we met upon Elpis. The Warrior of Light shouts that they will reach their allies in any way they can, and Azem's magic begins to take effect, summoning forth not the Scions, but two other friends back from the ethereal sea. The ancients themselves, Emet-Selch and Hythlodaeus. Upon arrival, they finally recall those memories lost during the escapade into Katisis Hyperborea, and Emet-Selch grumbles about being forced to watch the clamorous show. Meteon questions the existence of these two beings, and Emet-Selch states that they are half-faded souls of the dead. He goes on to wonder that Vanar had planned all this since that day, and gives the benefit of the doubt that she knew something like this might happen. He does, however, turn to the Warrior of Light and commend them for the advancements of mankind. He turns to Meteon and makes a declaration that she will not end our journey, that being the answer of anyone who ever lived or is to live on Etheris. Magic begins glowing around the two ancients, and they both will the Warrior of Light to call upon their allies' hopes, and in doing so, Emet-Selch and Hythlodaeus create a field of Elpis flowers, which completely cover the final platform. Meteon stands stunned, remembering Hermes' promise from ages past to bring her a beautiful flower upon her return from her visit to the myriad worlds among the stars. Emet-Selch proclaims that hope does exist in this place, and tells the Warrior of Light that the Scions no longer need to hold sway over the area, and the Warrior of Light uses Azem's crystal once more to bring them all, Thancred included, back to a physical form. The Scions give light-hearted commentary upon their return, thankful for the outcome of their sacrifice, and Alphinaud calls them to stop the final days once and for all, together. The Warrior of Light tells Meteon that her fight is over, and even for her to come with the Scions. The Dead Star begins to crack, and from it bursts the huge ball of collected emotions Meteon's built over the eons since her plan began. Meteon reverts to her bird form and flies off, entering the giant orb. A snap sounds from behind the Warrior of Light, and they turn to see Hythlodaeus and Emet-Selch begin to fade to the ether once more. Emet-Selch states that he cannot suffer being bound by Hydaelyn's magic, and instead wills the Scions to continue on and end the tale long since overdue. Although the Warrior of Light looks dejected at the thought, Emet-Selch explains to us all the new journeys lying on Etheris, be it visiting the golden cities of the New World, or discovering the identities of the 12. He even tells us that we should consider it our duty. Hythlodaeus wishes for another meeting, even in another life. They exchange a final banter and vanish once and for all, leaving the Scions to press on. Speaking with the Scions here, Alphinaud knows that we must proceed in preventing the final days. Thancred tells us of his experience fighting against the wave of despair while vanished among the ether, upholding the atmosphere produced by his own emotion. Y'shtola wishes to visit the places Emet-Selch had mentioned, should we be successful. Urianger prays for those worlds that suffered and died, be it to the final days themselves or simply to their own turmoil and pain. G'rahatia feels a connection to the Ancients, being the first to experience pain, and then forced to move on and live with terror, and Estinian tells us that he knew he could risk it all, even his own life, to help us move to our destination, trusting in our power to bring him back. Speaking with Alizé, she tells us she never knew what to say to him, being Emmett Selk, but is thankful and hopeful for the chance he has left the Scions. Alphinaud asks the Warrior of Light if they are ready, and reminding the Scions that their progress in Ultima Thule did not arise from rebuking and rejecting the emotions of the citizens there, but instead accepting them and opening our own hearts in solidarity with how they truly feel. Speaking with the Scions once more, Alphinaud ponders that the flowers here not only contain those lost souls holding out hope, but also those of Alizé himself and his comrades. Alizé even now vows to surpass the Warrior of Light, trying harder and harder than ever. Thancred gives a last once-over on their supplies, and vows to avert the end for Menphilia, Reen, and everyone else. Y'shtola poses the question of why the denizens of Elpis saw the Warrior of Light as a familiar, opposed to the Shades of Amarok viewing them as children, and vows to solve these mysteries should we succeed. Urianger contemplates the true amount of world's emotions potentially gathered within this dead star, but reminds us that where there is hope, there is a chance for victory. G'rahatir reminds us of our promise, the journey to Ishgard, the retelling of the Warrior of Light's adventures, and tells us that with a true desire in our hearts, there is no limits to the bounds of our adventure. And Estinian reminisces of the days where, after giving up his title and his duty, he felt as though there was no purpose in his life. But since joining the Scions, he has experienced excitement at every turn. And, as always, offers us his lance one last time, as we turn to enter the collective emotions. As we enter the Orb of Emotions, Meteion shows herself as we travel through the memories of the myriad worlds inside, apparently awaiting our arrival. A few of her sisters fly along with the party, and Meteion leads us to those stars that face the greatest despairs among those she visited. We arrive upon a seemingly twilight shore, and gazing around, we can see the sky is alight with some sinister black patches, and although the sunset effect caused by the sky appears warm at first, it quickly turns eerie with the surroundings. We travel along the sands, and Meteion begins to tell the story of this star, and how it was lost to horrible disease and plague. Puddles of the toxic material lie here and there as we travel along the beach, and we see the inhabitants of the star cowering and regrouping, trying to flee the encroaching disaster. The enemies within this section are those transformed by the rotting disease, and are mostly abominations, warped and twisted to be unrecognizable from their original forms. Along the path, we can find a few seashells with inscriptions upon them, written by the dying race apparently dominant over the star. The first upon the coast tells us of the mire and plague that consumes them, turning blood rancid and rotting the living beings from the inside, going on to tell us that no meaning could lie in this misery. The seashell speaks of a time when the race thrived beneath the waves in the peaceful times, and although they wanted for little, the craving of becoming more overtook them. Bearing fire and steel, they stormed the lands above the ocean, conquering the land dwellers. Defeating more abominations, we enter onto a long stretch of structures, appearing to be homes and buildings once belonging to the disease-ridden race. We see here, with Meteion's commentary, that the Namazu-like race, known as the Grebulov, began to turn upon one another, and instead of fighting the rampant disease, began casting out those suspected to have brought it to them. More abominations chase the beings away, and after defeating them, we approach the area known as Shell Mound. Just before the walkway to the platform, we find another seashell, this one expressing their dismay at the downfall of their race. How the population quickly overcame any habitable areas, and how the oceans they once called home became tainted and darkened from the pollution of the weapons of the conquest they created. With the overcrowded homes, the sickness eventually manifested and spread. With this, the beings turned to death as a way out, knowing life will inevitably end, and knowing too that the wise among them embrace this end without delay. After this, we reach Shell Mound and find upon it another tainted and twisted Grebulov, which begs for help as it attacks the party. During the fight, it uses many abilities in an attempt to spread the horrid disease, blowing clouds of the toxic germs in different directions. After its defeat, Meteion opens a portal to follow on to the next world she wishes to deter us with, and the party follows on through. We arrive in the middle of what was once a city, stuck in the midst of an all-out war between two rival factions. Meteion explains that although this star did in fact eliminate disease, the war eventually broke out and began to claim the lives it once saved. Along the path here, we fight many of the soldiers and creations used for combat, as areas of the floor around us are targeted with explosive barrages. One particular soldier appears to make their way towards the terminal, and scales the nearby wall, which upon defeat of the enemies itself is blasted away. We find a letter of correspondence on the other side, and it appears to explain the source of the war. It tells us that otherworldly beings arrived on the planet, and both sides believe that the being in question supported their respective factions. This particular letter suggests that the freedom fighters oppose the idea of a united world, claiming to have forgotten the previous wars waged and the lives lost, and that the world should come together under the same banner, no matter the cost. As we proceed, a Magitech-like unit fires more missiles towards the party and flees, and we follow the path along while handling more of the freedom fighter troops. Once we defeat the enemies, the blockade nearby is blasted away also, leading the way to the deterrence grounds, but not before another letter of correspondence. It seems as though the Peacekeeper, the missile-loaded construct we saw earlier, was created in order to deal with the freedom fighters in order to bring peace. However, it seems as though the artificial intelligence within the units, which they each used to calculate the way to peace, backfired upon its creators, as it eventually determined them as a threat to peace also. The 10,000 created peacekeepers began firing at all comers, and now the only thing left for both factions is to fight until the end. We reach the deterrence grounds, finding the peacekeeper in question awaiting us. During this fight, the construct uses many of its attached weapons to try and defeat the party. Volumes of missiles, an electromagnetic field underneath itself, and several barrages of detached laser beams attempt to damage the party. Upon defeat, the peacekeeper is destroyed, and we can follow the path opposite. With a comment from Meteon, we see the previous soldier appear from the debris, and after activating the terminal, exclaims that they have killed them all. But after this exclamation, the realization dawns on the global citizen, as they repeat the devastating line once more. Meteon produces a final portal, and the party proceeds through to the area known as the Plenty. We can see the bright colours and deep blue sky, as well as an enormous tree towards the background. Meteon informs us that this world, while it removed the trials of life that we face every day, eventually became stale and joyless, and the inhabitants began to wish for death. We see a large creature appear, and as the citizens of the star praise it for its coming, it beats its wings and evaporates the nearby people. As we cross the bridge, we can see a glimpse of the star below, and although the part we walk on is bright and well maintained, the star below appears cracked and desolate. Golden creatures in the form of butterflies appear here, absorbing more of the star's people. Not unlike the previous worlds, you can find hints of a long-forgotten essence upon the benches here. It tells a story of when Meteon arrived upon their star, and posed the question of what life means to their race. The inhabitant could not find a satisfactory answer, and turned to their memories of ages past, when life was about seeking their purpose. But this was before their transformation into perfection, and through this condemnation of themselves, they understood the futility of life. It seems as though Meteon could not accept these answers, and repeated her questions, perhaps hoping for a different one. Fighting our way through more of the alien creatures and the golden-winged butterflies, we see more citizens begging the large creature, known as Rala, to set them free from their suffering. We cross another tree bridge and defeat a final set of creatures, after which we find the final forgotten essence upon the platform. This essence reminisces of the time when their race sought to explore the skies above, and found courage in the concept of unveiling the mysteries of existence, both of which were destroyed once the people found their way to immortality. Once more, the essence tells of a time when the elders believed they could leave a righteous path their successors might follow. But once again, this idea was thrown away due to the discovery of their path to enlightenment. And so, knowing that no question needs answering, they created Rala to bring mercy through annihilation upon their race. We arrive at the World Tree, and we see Rala arrive, mercifully consuming the essence of the nearby citizens with the butterflies. Rala then begins to battle the party. During the fight, Rala attempts to use many of its abilities to try and mercifully destroy the party. Its light step causes large explosions around the arena, and it occasionally uses its wings to blow away half of the arena. When injured, the creature will summon butterflies which spray energy in opposite directions, giving a party member doom if hit. Upon defeat, the creature cries out and collapses, vanishing once more into a memory. Meteion appears to break the illusion of the lost world, and the bright atmosphere fades along with the surroundings, the world tree and the dead star beneath vanishing, retaining simply the dark night sky. The light from the projected world extinguished, Meteion appears once more, wondering how our determination could be so strong. Alizé shouts that although there are things that could bring anyone to tears, strength lies in the people who will bring us up again to fight once more. Meteion begins gathering her innumerable sisters, who form into a huge cloud above the Scions. Coalescing and forming a dark, ooze-like substance, the form solidifies and births an enormous winged creature, which looks down upon the Scions, who in response ready themselves for battle. This being, the Endsinger, immediately forms together crumbled planets, apparently with her own mind, which she sends forth at the Scions. Estinian jumps high and dives towards her, but is blasted away by yet another planet. The blue bird of Meteion arrives and begs the Endsinger to stop, as Thancred and Urianger attempt to attack the latter, while Y'shtola prepares a spell. However, the Endsinger sends forth some of her dark, despairing tears, and attempts to drop yet another planet onto Urianger. However, Alphinaud aids him with a Eucrasian shield, which breaks after a few seconds. Once more, the blue Meteion attempts to plead with the Endsinger, but to no avail as the latter strikes an attacking Alizé. The Endsinger unleashes a violent windstorm, blowing Alizé away. However, G'raha leaps in front of the Warrior of Light and defends them, but after a few seconds, he too is blown away along with the rest of the Scions. As the Endsinger prepares an enormous planet to destroy the Scions and the Warrior of Light, the latter draws the teleportation device given to them by Wilson and Blavida, smiles and says farewell to the Scions, and presses the button, allowing all but themselves to escape the blast. The Endsinger mocks the Warrior of Light, referring to the so-called strength given by the allies no longer by our side. She then expounds upon the way she will make us suffer before our eventual end, and tells us once more that through their efforts did they discover that the only way out is death, and death alone, and prepares to destroy us once and for all. Of all the aid the Warrior of Light could have hoped for, the person they'd least expect bursts through the surrounding shell, invading into the territory, that of Xenos Viator Galvus, but in the draconic form of Shimru, as he once assumed long before. He explains that he discovered his own answer, and after bargaining with Kryl, he was able to feed on the remains of the Mother Crystal in exchange for helping the Scions, and thus used his new form to travel to the stars to find us. Turning to the Endsinger, he wonders how the being is still alive, considering it is our prey. The Warrior of Light tells Xenos that given the chance, they would not save him. Xenos roars raucously, bidding us focus on the task at hand, and flies forward. The Warrior of Light leaps forth from the platform onto the back of the dragon, and, evading several blasts from the Endsinger, Azum's crystal glows once more, calling forth a platform and 7 adventurers to our side. The last threat, this final challenge to save Atheris and all the other worlds still fighting for their lives. During the fight, the Endsinger uses several more of her planet-based abilities, along with the abilities we saw her use against the Scions, her tears, oozing puddles of dangerous despair, and eventually summoning forth a minion while she builds energy for an enormous blast, which can only be survived by the use of a tank's limit break. One thing to note here is that after the limit break is used, the Endsinger says, "Dynamis," perhaps referring to the fact that our limit-breaking abilities have always been thanks to this powerful rush of energy, but not quite akin to that of ether, more so to the emotions we share with our comrades. However, after this devastating blast, she simply uses her abilities to retell the event, and without defense, blasts us away for good.
Light the way!
However, the prayers of our allies shine forth, with all of them holding out hope, creating a barrier around the party. And as the Endsinger questions our will to yet stand, our allies once more share their beliefs and determination, galvanizing our spirit.
What is this defiance? No! The hatred, the pain, the loss. We cannot suffer it again.
We will stand against fate.
No matter the cost.
We've been here before. Many a time.
Thus do we know.
To never give up.
The hope will shine again.
With our hearts combined, our allies right behind us, we put a final blow to the Endsinger, who questions that if her answer wasn't the truth, where would happiness truly lie?
If this was not the answer, then what is it?
After this, Xenos glides along as the Warrior of Light leaps from his back, descending far down until they reach some sort of flooring. The area here is almost emptiness, aside from the bluish surface of the floor. The Warrior of Light runs towards the now defeated Meteon, who hopelessly states that their findings on the stars they visited were never worthy of Hermes, as he was the kind of man who deserved nothing but the best news. She looks up, and gives her usual introduction to all those she spoke to long before. The Warrior of Light takes her hand, closes their eyes, and Meteon sheds a tear as she sees the thoughts of all the people the Warrior of Light has met over their long journey. How their reasons for living differed day by day and person by person. That the answers sought by Hermes all that time ago could be found simply by living lives to their end. The Warrior of Light tells her that we created it together, all of Aetheris' people. Meteon asks to sing one last song, as although she cannot repay the wrongs her sisters and her caused, she may at least bring some spark of hope back with her disappearance, and, looking towards the sky, she brings a shower of stars forth, causing a nearby sun to rise, and finally returns to her blue-haired self, free from the eons of never-ending despair. She believes that life will one day return to the universe, as after all, miracles happen every day, and she bids us wish to return to our comrades, so that she may make a path from our hopes, rather than our despair. After this, Meteon transforms into a bluebird once again, and flies off into the starlit sky. The Warrior of Light stands in thought for a moment, while the newborn sun shines upon their face, when from behind, Xenos Viator Galvus begins speaking. He knows that we wish to return to our home, to Aetheris, where we are hailed as a hero. He wishes to speak plainly to us, not as our heroic self, but as merely ourself. He tells us of his knowledge of our strength, of how fighting us requires him to bring his all, even to burn through the candle of his life in order to bring us down. He issues another, final, universe-worthy challenge to the Warrior of Light, who in contrast to Xenos lays down their life for the good of the people. However, Xenos proclaims that there is a side to the Warrior of Light that involves pushing our very existence to the limit, be it against more and more powerful foes, or being ever closer onto the brink of death, hoping to fill the apparent void within. He asks if it is untrue that we seek these things simply for themselves, and not for some greater power or reason. The adventurer admits to Xenos that that is something they cannot deny. Xenos triumphantly exclaims that we are accepting at last, and he prepares to do battle with us. During this final battle, Xenos uses several of his extremely powerful Reaper abilities, and he also channels and executes every single one of the abilities used by Shinru, which in turn are the hugely powerful abilities used by the Primals. After evading his attacks and bringing him to his knees, he stands once more and enshrouds himself with his spirit, becoming more demonic looking and giving him glowing red eyes. He takes advantage of the change and lunges at the Warrior of Light, forcing them to their knees after a devastating attack, but they find the strength to push on. After managing to down Xenos once more, he pulls the Warrior of Light to the centre of their arena and channels one final ability, an enormous scythe, as the Warrior of Light fights with all their might to repel it. They are successful, blasting Xenos away. However, he quickly recovers, charging at the exhausted Warrior of Light as they too lunge forward. Exchanging blows, with both combatants becoming more and more tired, Xenos knocks the Warrior of Light away with a kick, and after catching their breath, both attack one final time, their fists glowing with power dark and light. The Warrior of Light comes out victorious, striking Xenos, who flies backwards to the ground, defeated. Xenos attempts to stand, gazing at the exhausted Warrior of Light, but merely flops onto his back as his spirit vanishes, returning him to normal. He is dejected at the notion of losing a second time. The Warrior of Light also collapses to the floor, and Xenos begins to mourn his inability through life to understand why those around him obsessed over anything, calling the world a place of tedium and trivialities. He does now recognise, however, that between the boring nature of life, there are those sparks that ignite the flames of passion, however fleeting they may be. He poses the same question to us, being almost the antithesis of Xenos, always seeking adventure and saving people. The Warrior of Light's eyes begin to waver as they experience memories of the past, the areas they once explored and saved. Xenos asks his question.
Was this life a gift? Or a burden?
As we look back on the good and the bad of our long, long journey, Xenos asks again.
Did you find fulfillment?
And as we ponder the more recent elements of our past, his voice and his breath slowly begin to fade. The Warrior of Light, struggling to keep their eyes open, sees a glint of light fall towards them. The teleportation device used not long ago to rescue the Scions hits the floor and activates once more, and as Xenos lies still, his goal fulfilled and his story ended, the Warrior of Light is transported away from this desolate, beautiful area, and finds their way back to the Ragnarok once more. And, at long last, that was everything about Ultima Thule. I cannot stress enough how much I fell in love with this zone and its duties, and I even found myself idling in the area just for the music and the aesthetic, as well as doing the fates in the zone to unlock the Orchestrium role for myself. I finished the story on day 2 of Endwalker's Early Access, and while I sat in my chair at 4 AM, absolutely devastated by the events, while the Endsinger fell, I was in tears at the absolute beauty of the ending of a tale started ages ago. I really, truly hope you enjoyed this video. I put my heart and soul into this one, and I hope the duration and information really shows it. If you did enjoy, please consider leaving a comment or a like, and subscribing to the channel for more. And thank you so much for watching until the end.